How do you create a commercial that highlights someone's past as well as the person they've become? Or tell the story of what they've gone through in the different stages of their life? Documentary commercial filmmaking is one of the best forms of storytelling when it comes to exploring someone's past, as well as showcasing who they have become. In this video, I'm going to be looking at a commercial that we created for Sportsnet that explores these same topics, as well as go into how we actually created this project in terms of pre-production, as well as a full cinematography breakdown. This project was for Sportsnet, and it was a story piece to live on their website and socials for Asian Heritage Month. We have a long time running relationship with Sportsnet, where we do everything from event coverage, interviews, and small commercial spots like this for their diversity and inclusion branch. Every year, we're usually involved in creating a commercial or content piece for Black History Month, and this year we were told that we would be able to pitch for any other months like this that were coming up. This meant that we had to generate the creative itself, pitches to Sportsnet, and get approval to move on with the project. Like I said, we have a working relationship with Sportsnet, and this has been built over many years. So we're at the point where they generally love our work and they trust our creative process. The month of May was coming up, and that was Asian Heritage Month. Generally for these pieces, we're telling somebody's story, and we had to find something that was related to Asian heritage as well as sports, as this was airing on Sportsnet. Luckily, Jason, one of the directors of the piece, was in talks with Olivia Ho, who had an interesting story to tell about her journey and how basketball could impact people's lives. And this exactly fits the bill. She is of Asian heritage, and the story we're telling relates to sports itself. For any project, spec or paid, we always make a director's treatment, and we had to do that to pitch this project. A director's treatment is a document that clearly outlines all elements of a film, music video, commercial, or even TV pilot. It's typically used by filmmakers, directors, television producers, or any other video professional pitching an idea. For this specific project, our director's treatment included an introduction to the main character, the story of the piece itself, the tone and approach of this project, and how the project would be edited, as well as the intention for music and sound. There are a few tweaks in terms of what Sportsnet wanted in the piece, and from there we moved on to planning out the days as well as prepping for production itself. This project was shot on Arri Mini paired with the Zeiss Super Speed Mark IIIs. The directors as well as the DP wanted a look that was vintage, and this is the perfect pairing and really adds character to the piece itself. If you're interested in seeing how this camera and lens combo look, you can look at the piece itself as well as another example with this music video breakdown here. This was shot in the talent's home, a subway station, workshop studio session that she runs, basketball court in a church, an additional local basketball court and gym, and finally exteriors around the talent's home. When it comes to shooting commercials like this, the most important thing that you can do is to cover your bases in terms of the amount of scenes you have, and we like to call this coverage. You don't want to get to the edit and not have enough footage or variety to get your story across. And usually there's some sort of master shot or spine to the piece that you can cut back to, and in this piece specifically, it's the silhouette of the talent as she's reflecting on her life. And this is the first shot that we're going to be looking at. To be completely transparent, I was the gaffer on this project, but the DP, directors, and I had a really close relationship and collaborative process to execute this project. Brick! Oh my God! What I want to talk about specifically in this scene is knowing your camera setting as well as planning this out specifically. This is a reflection shot that we're constantly cutting back to, and we knew that this was going to carry the whole piece, so we wanted this to be the nicest looking shots and basically the most effort into the piece itself. To do this and execute this, we had a production designer come in, and we actually shot this in the middle of the day and utilized a big balcony window in the talent's home itself. So we removed all the furniture and put up these drapes that you see here. So we have some solid drapes that block out a lot of the light, but you can see some behind it. And then in the middle here, we have these shears or curtains that we used. And this was basically diffusing the light and not letting you know what is in the background itself. And this just goes to good planning in terms of what the directors and what the DP wanted the shot to look like specifically. So again, they wanted the silhouette that was playing into these colors. So this is just setting your camera's white balance properly and then pushing it in post in the coloring process. So we had our white balance set at 4400 Kelvin. This sets daylight a little bit more blue, and this was again heavily pushed in post. So there weren't really any specific lights, but there's a light gag in this whole piece, and I did have a Titan II rigged up overhead. And this was at another small percentage just to add a little bit of edge and fill back to the subject itself, which you can see in some of the tights that we're going to be looking at. So again, this goes to utilizing a space. We didn't have a lot of room, and we actually had to back up and shoot out into a hallway. But this again goes back to good planning and knowing exactly what your shot is. Now we're going into one of the tights of the sequence. We shot this blue as well as we shot this red to symbolize exactly what she's going through. As you can see, she's a little bit frustrated and angry. So again, we have that overhead tube, and there wasn't any grid on this as well. So we set this to an orange. It was around 2700 Kelvin, and then we pushed this in post as well. And then that is spilling all the light, basically what you see on this curtain here. And then also giving a nice edge light to our talent that is motivated by that curtain as well. But to add some fill, so we're not going into the complete blacks here, we actually had a light panel set up, and this was the Aperture F22. And this had double diffusion on it as well as a grid. We always just have that grid on there to, kill the spill. But in this case, we shot it back up at a wall, and then this was bouncing back off this wall to add some fill as in wrap around here as well. So we could have just had the tube there, and that would be adding all the light to the background as well as that edge light on her face. But we again wanted to fill the shadow side of her subject a little bit more. And you commonly just do this with a fill light that you can shoot directly, but we wanted it even softer and just to give that nice natural wrap from the edge of her face to back into the shadows that was nice and gradual. The next thing that we're going to be looking at is this basketball scene, and we're dealing with a large space, so generally all our shots are wide. So the question is how do you light a specific space like this? And you always look for spaces that have windows in it and how we can motivate our light coming from the windows. So in this wide, I'm going to start with the wide here because you can actually see the light that we have up here. But in that window specifically, we have an Aperture 600D. Just daylight shooting through that window with a Fresnel as well. What the Fresnel does is it allows you to focus the light or flood it specifically. So if you want it spreading across a large space, it gives you that option, as well as if you twist it, it gives you the option to cut the beam in half. So if we're looking at the beam itself of this light and the Fresnel on it, I don't exactly remember the focal length, but it gives you the option to spread the light like this or shoot it on a narrow degree like that. It's not exactly like a spotlight or anything, but it just gives you more control when you're playing with these lights specifically. And then in this window here, we actually had another light. Well, this is a Forza 500, so an Aperture 600D equivalent. And we have that also on another Fresnel spotted just to give that more motivating, as you can see on the splashes on the floor here. So with this specific light here, you can see that beam and you can see how we focus that specifically. But in the other light here, you'll see it in the other shots, we actually shot it through to actually add some shape to look like it's sunlight, that we're shooting this in the middle of the day. But in actuality, the sun is overhead and the sun is not even remotely near these windows, because to actually shoot something like this, it would have to be morning or late night where you have those sun shooting through the windows like that. Just to shoot this practically, you'd have the sun really low, and it wouldn't be exactly that daylight feel. It would be more sunrise or sunset. So this is just another way to cheat it with using exterior sources. And this is the same scene. Again, we always light our wide and then move in for our tights, as you're going to see in the next actually frame that we look at. So we have our 600D with our Fresnel shooting through that window, and then it's splashing all this light on the floor, as well as selling the effect that we're in mid-daylight and that sun is blasting through those windows itself. And then we have the 500, Forza 500, that nan light with a Fresnel as well, and it's shooting through that other window, and it's giving us all this detail and what we like to call a checkerboard whenever you're looking at these images specifically. So what I mean is checkerboard, we also like to commonly call it salt and pepper. We're looking at lights and dark parts of your image. So if I were to label the dark parts of the image with a blue color, we can see it here, another dark part here, back side of his shoes, as well as this side of the bench, our talent here that we're looking at, and then this is an actual railing, that's not a shadow. And then if we kind of label the light parts of our image, we can see that this checkerboard of color and light is actually appearing. You always want to have visual interest in terms of composition as well as light. A lot of people only look at visual interest as composition, but you have to look into terms of the lighting aspect to draw your viewer to whatever you're specifically looking at. And in this specific part here, we have that checkerboard that shows that we're highlighting the talent. in terms of a composition as well as lighting. And then I would say this is the height of the sequence where we had to kind of add lights to sell this even more. So the lights that we're going to be talking about first are the lights that we had in the scene. So again, we have that Forza 500 in this close window, and then we have the Aperture 600D in this far window here, shooting here. And then this one is shooting here. For this scene specifically, we had to adjust these lights a little bit. So the Forza 500 in the second window was actually shooting on this wall and giving us the shape that we see here, that it is window light. And the way you really sell window light is that it's spreading across a surface, as well as you kind of have some sort of frame or something in it, so it looks like it's shooting through a window. And then we have the 600D actually splashing on the bench and then giving a nice edge light on the talent itself, as you can see here, as well as this nice spot on the floor. So when it comes to this image itself, we've already established that we're in the gym, and then we have these outside exterior sources. In these scenarios, you have to pop your subject out more in terms of wrapping the light around their face. And if we were just doing it by the sources we have, we would only have the edge light. What I talk about in terms of wrapping it is taking that edge light and bringing it across their face and having a shadow as well as a gradient. To do that, you can use any source. You can have an Aperture 120D with a big dome or anything like that, just to pop out your subject a little bit more. But we like to use a big panel light. This is like a 4x3, I would say, or like a 3x2 panel light, and it has its own built-in diffusion. And this is called the IntelliTech Mega Light Cloth, and we had this set as well to 5600 because it's a bicolor light. And we are matching what these lights are specifically. You always want to obviously match your source by what it's being motivated by. And in this case, this is daylight. So that light is also shooting here, and this is giving us the levels on her face. And you can see a tiny bit of Rembrandt lighting that we're always looking for. And then also that edge light from the exterior lights, but that light on her leg and filling up her shadow side is coming from that key itself. And then we have a lot of depth here in terms of where we had to move the bench, but we wanted a little bit more. And to do that is you always add a little hair light to your subject or a little like fill on the shadow side. So we actually have an Amaran F22 light. This is our kind of go-to light that we always use. Double diffuse, again set to 5600 Kelvin, as we're matching this daylight scene that we're going for. And this is on ever so slightly, and you can kind of see it on the top of her head, but it's just adding a nice edge to the image itself. I know it's hard to specifically tell. We have this at a very low percentage, but this just pops your subject out a little bit more and helps you with the depth aspect in terms of what you're looking at. Whenever you're looking at a shot and you seem like, oh, it's a little flat, always just add a hair light. Well, and I always try to say motivate your key light, but you also have to motivate your hair light, and it's really hard to justify it sometimes, but we've already established that we're in the gym with a bunch of windows, so you can say that there's light coming from a lot of sources. So a hair light in this case, I would say, is motivated. In a commercial, you typically have 30 to 60 seconds to tell a story. And to tell somebody's life story in that time can be tough. There's so many forms of commercial filmmaking that allow you to do this, but the question is, where do you even get started? I hope this video helped in that topic, but if you're looking for another example, I have a video queued up here for you that you probably will like. If you have any questions, please let us know in the comments below. Consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.